Hello guys, welcome back, and in this video we are going to consider some of the essential of using Vue.js. So far we've seen how to install and set up Vue.js, and now let us just look at the file structure and some of the really basic um, components of Vue.js. So I'm here on the project that I did set up, nothing fancy, I haven't changed anything. So let us look on a couple of things here just to be able to understand what is going here. So inside this Vue application, we have this is okay, this .vs code that is not necessary, that is generated by the IDE, but we have the node folder here. This is where all the dependencies for this project are stored when you download them, the node module. And then we have, when I scroll down, let me just do this. We have the public. So public is where you will store assets and things that you want them to be compiled when you run npm run build. All right, and you don't they will not necessarily change oftenly. So this is where you place such items. Then we have the source folder, which is our key folder that we'll use many a times. So in the asset folder, there is where we store, things like CSS, again, images, and all those things. We'll see all these implication of storing your images and your assets on the assets folder or storing them on the public folder. Then we have components. Components is where you store let me say, the small parts of your application. So a button can be a component, a whole page can be a component, maybe a functionality such as creating a user, editing a user can be a component, and majorly components are reusable. So that is where you store your components in the component folder. So the router, and if you check inside, let me just open for you just to see. So if you go inside the asset, you find base CSS. This is just a normal CSS. Inside the component, we have the icon. This is used to store the icon in SVG format. And then we have the components. We have the components such as the hello world. And if you go inside this hello world, it's just a view file, with normal HTML and Vue code and some JavaScript there, yeah. And then the router, this is where you define your routes. So if you want to have routes such as /about, /home, /create user, this is where you define your route so that they can be able to be rendered in as a single as part of this single page. Otherwise, if you don't define your routes here, you won't be able to render them as view routes. And then we have the store. For store, this is something that I install as a, as a dependency, and we'll see later how to use the store. So the store is used to manage the state of your application. Yeah. So for example, to track the data when the user is logged in and then logged out, all those things that used to be, they can be managed with the store, and also managing data from the API and then getting it to the UI, all that can be managed from the store. Then we have views, as the name suggests. These are just now the main pages that are rendered on the browser. So if I click, for example, this is the about page. If I go to the browser here, so if I go to the browser here, we have the home page here. So this by default is rendering this home view here. All right, and if I go to /about, this will render the about view. So that is the idea. So if you want a page to be rendered, you have to define it in the view folder so that it can be rendered. So here is where you define your view, and this view, as I've told you, they have components. So for example, the about view, let us say the home view here, as you look on top here, it has imported component and then the welcome.view. So this the welcome.view, this is a component that has been used inside the home view. We are going to see all this and how to use them, so don't be worried. Then we have the app.view. This is the main, I can say the main, this is the main page or the main file that is used to manage the views. Also, the main JS is this is where you also define your dependencies. You are going to see all this, so don't be worried. Then, of course, there are some other files here which are not very important for now. So with that, that is okay. And now, without further ado, let us dive in and just get our hands dirty and try to do something. So what I'm going to do, number one, I'm going to delete a lot of things here so that we can start, from a blank page, a slate page with nothing, so that we can learn as we go. So inside the component, I'm going inside here. I'm going to delete every file inside the icon. Delete this. Okay, I'm going to delete also these components. I know I'm going to get some error, but it's okay for now. So let us start from a completely clean application. So inside the about, for now, I'm going to delete everything inside the about, including these style guys here. And inside the H1, I'm going just to say, let us just say about like this. About page, that is enough. That is normal HTML. In the home view, inside the main, I'm going to use maybe also an H1. And I'm going to say this is the home page. I'm going to delete every guy that has been imported here like this. Then I'm going inside the assets also. I'm going to delete everything here. Okay, let us just delete these two for now, like this. And inside the main.css folder, or rather the main.css file, I'm going to delete everything inside here. And so that is it. If I go inside the route, this is okay. So I'm going to, let us see, I'm going to cut this like this, and that is okay. Let us see if we have any error in our browser. Definitely we have error. It says failed to resolve an import hello world, and that is inside the app.view. So I'll go inside our app.view. Inside our app.view, I'll expand this guy here and I'll delete this guy here, and then I can say we don't need this hello world here now, like that. And then let me see. All right, that for now is okay. Let's see. We still have an error, and that is inside the app, the asset logo. We're importing something that we don't have, so I'm going also to delete this line here, like that, and let us see. Hopefully all the errors are gone. Yeah, so and that is it. So kindly check up here. So if I click about, there is still some change here. If I click home, it goes to home. Yeah, if I click about, as you can see here, but the page doesn't reload. So that is the beauty with Vue.js. And now having our clean slate, now let us now start getting our hands dirty and start learning Vue.js. So what I'm going to do so for now we'll just start with the basic more functionality, and then as we go on we'll incorporate things like Tailwind and learn how even to build wonderful UIs as we go on. But for now, what I'm going to do inside the home page here, I'm going to say, let us say, for example, we have a variable called message. So this is how you declare a variable inside the HTML. You use this so-called mustache curly braces. And then what I'm going to say is that, let us say, for example, that I'm going to have a constant here, and I'm going to call this constant, of course, message. And I'm going to say this is our guy, hello world, all right? Hello world, like that. So if I go back here, we still have the same thing, but now this is a variable. So if I change this and say hello world test, and if I go back here, As you can see, it changed. If I say this hello world 3, I go back here, as you can see now this is dynamic. But now this variable, if you want to bind it or if you want to use it inside the tags, you won't do something like this. Instead, you'll use what we call binding, view binding. And so, for example, if I want to bind this message to be the ID of this h1, I'll have to say vbind, and then the variable that I want in this case is ID. I'll say I want it to be our message like this. All right. So you say the bind and then ID, and then the name of the variable, in our case is message. So if I go here, you will not see anything. But if I do, let me just do page inspect instead. If I inspect this now, as you can see now, we have the ID as hello world 3. And kindly note, if I, for example, change here and say hello world ID, if I go back here, it will do a refresh. And now if I go inside our main, expound this, you can see now the ID is hello world ID. So that is how basically I can say you bind your data to variables and then use them inside your Vue applications. And now there is shorthand for this. You can just simply do something like ID like this instead of having the vbind, and this will do the very same thing that we have done here. So again, if I forgot to leave the inspection on, expound this, if I go inside here, go inside main, you can see now the hello world ID is still the same. That is just basically the same thing. Yeah, and so the other guys, the other thing that you guys need to note is that this binding also applies to to things like Boolean. And so, for example, let's add just a button here. So I'll just add a button here, and I'll say disabled. Okay, for now, let us just say disabled. I'll say is equals to maybe a variable call is button disabled like this. And I'm going just to now, as we have just learned, we can now vbind this disable like this, and we can have now have a value here. We can have a value here. Let's call a guy disabled. By default, we can have this value as maybe false. So that will mean that button is not disabled by default. So if I go here, okay, it doesn't have anything. I need to say maybe just button like this. So this, if I go here, now this button is clickable, yeah. But if I go now and change this to maybe to be true, if I save this, I go, as you can see now the button is disabled, which means the boolean is being applied dynamically to this button. The other thing is that inside these mustache curly braces, you can also apply variables, expression rather. So for example, I can say message. I believe in JavaScript you can be able to do something like this. Let us try and see. And let me just remove this disable for now because I've set it to false, to true rather. Let me just do this and go back here and say false. So the button will not be disabled, and go back so that you guys can see. So as you can see now here we have hello world ID false, and that is because I've concatenated these strings. So which basically means I can be able to use expression here such as 20 and say maybe times 20. This, I expect this to give me 400 like that. So I can be able to use expression here, but I cannot be able to do something like this because this is not an expression. I cannot say const message, let's say number is equal to 3. This is wrong because this is not an expression. So this will throw an error as you expect. So the other thing is that you can also go as far as v-binding, things like on objects. So for example, I can have an object here. Let's call this test object, and this object, of course, we can have. Let us say we have the name, and the name is maybe Kevin, like this. Maybe the age is maybe 56. Maybe hobby is maybe, let us say, swimming, like this. So we can be able to use images, or rather we can be able to use object like that, and then I can say that now the ID of this button should be maybe my test object. I should out to rename this to be object, like that, and then I can be able to say I want to get the maybe the name. I want to get the name like this. Yeah, and as you can see now, we have the object with the binded with name, like that. So if I go there and say maybe I want the age to be the ID, if I go back, you see it changes. Let us try maybe the hobby also, like this. If I go back, as you can see now, we have the hobby there. So that is how you can be able to v-bind, and that is just the basic of defining variables in Vue and rendering them in the HTML of your Vue.